Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to what we hope you'll find to be a mildly amusing interlude with the over-the-hill trio of the noted stand-up comic Jim, one-time Swabby Villa, Jerry, 88 Keys Sanders, and me, Earl, the Pearl Peck, as their foil, interjector, and straight man. First now, how about another round of applause for Jerry's great introductory melodies. Jerry, thanks much. Not bad for a one-handed, accident-prone, bawdy house piano player. Huh? In those days, he had a monkey on the piano with him. A fellow sitting at the piano told Jerry irritably, "Do you know your monkey has his tail in my martini?" Jerry said, "No, but if you hum a few bars, I can play it." When I first told Jerry about this gig, Jim, Jerry, and me, he said, "If that doesn't kill show business, nothing will." Before I bring out the star, he asked me to recite a poem about my rememberer, a subject that we thought appropriate for an audience of this maturity. My forgetter's getting better, but my rememberer is broke. To you that may seem funny, but to me that's no joke. For when I'm here, I'm wondering if I really should be there. And when I try to think it through, I haven't got a prayer. Oftentimes I walk into a room, say, "What am I here for?" I rack my brain, but all in vain. A 0 is my score. At times I put something away where it's safe, but gee, the person it is safest from is generally me. When shopping, I may see someone, say hi and have a chat, and when that person walks away, I say, "Who was that?" Yes, my forgetter's getting better, while my rememberer is broke. And it's driving me, and many of you, I think, plumb crazy, and that isn't any joke. Now it is my distinct pleasure and high honor to bring out that star of stage, screen, radio, Regency, and the back alleys of Shanghai, from just off Broadway. Would you believe Pittsburgh? Jim Villa. You need some help?
No, I'm just fine. I've been walking like this for 89 years. You know, Earl, I didn't plan to say this, but you're getting funnier.
Really?
Oh, yeah, you were terrific tonight.
Thank you.
The introduction's part of the reason I come.
Oh, really?
Oh,
now,
yes.
now we can leave?
Oh, you can leave, so can I. You can get replaced if you get any funnier. Okay, I have a couple of thank yous.
You want to use the mic?
Yes, I better use it. Let's see. Turn it on.
It's on.
It's on. Hi, everybody. Hey, can everybody hear me? The pretty lady way at the windows, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's call it quits. It looks good already. All right, I do want seriously to thank Ernestine Morgan, who is here tonight. She is the CEO of the Morton Plant Meese Foundations. And she was instrumental in setting up the video, which this gentleman is doing. I don't know when we're going to use it, but okay. I also have to thank another gentleman who's sitting right in front of me, Mr. Brant Spence, because he provided the free wine. Did I tell you how we got the free wine?
No, you didn't tell me. What did you do then?
Well, no. Wait a minute. I want to tell you how I got it. I called Brant. Let me sit down. You all know stand-up comedians. This is a sit-down one. I called Brant and I said to him, would you be kind enough to give our audience free wine? I expected to hear the standard. It's not in the budget. If I do it for you, I'm going to have to do it for everybody. But I didn't hear that. I saw an enthusiastic, cooperative, a wonderful guy smiling. He said to me, it's my pleasure to give your audience wine.
And then what did you do?
Well, what could I do? I took the gun away from his head and I thanked him. A little slapstick, isn't it? Okay. Before I get started into the jokes, of which we both will do, poor Jerry, you know, I better tell you all this right off the bat. We do not rehearse. We've never had a rehearsal. Jerry, we don't know what he's going to play. Jerry doesn't know what we're going to say. Earl and I don't know what each other are going to say. It just comes out. But at any rate, I want you to know we don't get paid for this. And that's most unusual for me. But there's such a wonderful crowd of people and neighbors and friends. Our pay will be laughter. Please laugh. Okay. Now, before I get into my jokes, there's a short story that I want to tell you, and it's entitled Shame in the Family. There is a young man who fell in love, and he was anxious to get married to his little turtle dove. So he went to his father to ask his advice, and his father said, son, she's very nice, but I'm sorry to say, I must say no. You see, this girl is your half-sister, but your mother doesn't know. Well, of course, the boy is upset, but another year passes, and can't you guess? The kid's in love again. This time it's Bess. So he goes to his father to seek his advice. And his father says, son, she's really very nice. But I'm sorry to say, I must say no. You see, she too is your half-sister. And your mother doesn't know. Well, now the kid is angry. And he thinks his mother ought to know. So he goes to her and he tells her so. And his mother says, son, if you love this girl, go, man, go. 'Cause your daddy's not your daddy and the dumbbell doesn't know. He's supposed to hit the key. Well, I'm going to start with just 4 or 5 jokes, and then I'll turn it over to you.
Let me know when you run out of steam.
You won't live that long. But anyhow, I want to tell you about a middle-aged couple, lovely couple, in their middle 80s, I should say, who is at the Florida State Fair. And at the fair, there's also a helicopter and a sign that says rides. 20 minutes for $50. Boy, and Buddy says, Edna, that's for me. I've always wanted to go up in one of those things. She said, well, you're not going, Buddy. Read the sign. 20 minutes for $50. $50 is $50. So Buddy doesn't get his ride. But a year passes, and they're back at the fair. And so is the helicopter and the sign. And he says, Edna, I'm going to put my foot down. I'm 85 years old, and I want to go up in this thing. And she said, Buddy, we went through this thing last year. The pilot walked over, and he said, excuse me, folks. I couldn't help but overhear your discussion. I'm going to take you both up for a ride, no cost. Absolutely free. But one condition. The condition is, I don't want to hear a sound, not a word, not a cry, not a shout out. If I do, it'll cost both of you $50. Well, they agree. And Edna says in a quiet way to Buddy, keep your mouth shut up there, Buddy. And up they go. And he jerks the craft to the left real hard, throws them up against the fuselage. He doesn't hear a sound. He jerks it to the right real hard. He still doesn't hear a sound. He climbs to a higher altitude. Still doesn't hear a sound, so he crash dives, and the ground is coming up fast, and he hears nothing. So he turns the craft upside down, and he flies for a couple of minutes that way. Still hears nothing, so out of disgust, he lands. He walks over to Buddy, and he says, you know, I congratulate you. I have done everything I know to make you shout out, but I didn't hear a sound. And Buddy said, Mr. Pilot, sir, you'll never know how bad I wanted to shout out, especially when Edna fell out. But you know, Edna always said $50 is $50. I'm going to do something tonight that is not easy. Of course, nothing is really easy when you get to be my age. But I'm going to try to tell 30 jokes extemporaneously, strictly from memory. I don't know how many you're going to tell because I have no idea about your memory. But I'm going to give it a go. So the first one I'm going to tell, I do have a list of what I want to tell. The first one I want to tell is about pretzels. Jerry, you'll love this and you'll understand it because this is not really a joke. This is a true story that took place in Pittsburgh. Yay! Anybody else from Pittsburgh? Okay. Hi, of course. Then you will know that this lady sat on the corner of Smithfield Street and Fifth Avenue under Kaufman's Clock selling pretzels. She had a sign that said pretzels, 25 cents, and she had a pot for you to throw the quarter in. Well, the next morning, a young, bright gentleman walks briskly by, throws 25 cents in the pot. It doesn't take a pretzel. The next morning he walks by, 25 cents in the pot, doesn't take a pretzel. And all that week he went by and threw 25 cents in her pot. Never took a pretzel. And the week went into a month, and a month went into summer, and summer went into winter. And the man still walked by, throwing 25 cents in the pot, but never took a pretzel. One day, she said, "Excuse me, sir." She said, "I'd like to speak to you." He said, "Of course you would." And he said, "I understand." He said, "You can't believe I walk by and give you 25 cents every day and never take a pretzel." She said, "That's not what I want to talk about." "Oh," he said, "well then what then?" She said, "I want to inform you that effective immediately, the pretzels are now 50 cents. It's like that in Pittsburgh. Now picture poor Grandpa. He's lying on his deathbed in his bedroom. His little granddaughter Sally is at his bedside. All of a sudden, there comes a whiff of an odor.
Your mic quit.
They quit. They're cheap, Brent. All of a sudden, you hear me now? There comes a whiff into the bedroom of a freshly baked apple pie. And he sniffs. Oh, he says, "Granddaughter, go tell Grandma I want a big slice of that. It's my dying wish. Apple pie is my favorite, and she knows it." So the girl goes in, talks to the grandmother, comes back. She says, "Grandpa, Grandma said no." I mean, what do you mean she said no? It's my dying wish. I want a piece of apple pie. Grandma said she's saving it for the funeral. Oh boy, now we're going to come on one. It's called the barber shop. One day, the barber shop door opens about 6 inches. A man says, "How long before I can get a haircut?" The barber looks around and he says, "Well, 4, 5, about 2 hours." He closes the door and he walks on. Next week, same man comes to the barber shop, opens the door, says, "How long before I can get a haircut?" Guy looks around and he says, 4 ahead of you, an hour and a half. He closes the door and he walks on. Well, the third week when he does it, the barber turns to one of the patrons that he knows and he says, "Joe, do me a favor. Follow that guy. Find out where he goes every week." So Joe leaves. 10 minutes later, Joe comes back. He is laughing hysterically. And the barber says, "What's so funny, Joe? Where does the guy go?" And he says, "Your house." You're on.
That's sooner than I expected. A 6-year-old boy called his mother from his friend Charlie's house and confessed he had broken a lamp when he threw a football inside. "But Mom," he said, brightening a little bit, he said, "you don't have to worry about buying another one. Charlie's mother said it was irreplaceable." Another one?
Hey, Earl,
You want another one right now?
you want another one? Give me another one right now.
3 very distinguished European philosophers were discussing the true meaning of happiness. One, an Englishman, said it's being in your lodge in the winter, fire in the fireplace, dog at your side, pipe here, perfect contentment, beautiful. The Frenchman said, "Oh, no, amour, amour. It's having a beautiful woman, soft wine, love, That's true happiness. And the Russian, and this was during the height of the Cold War, the Russian said, no, happiness is being in your flat in Moscow in the middle of the night and loud rapping on the door. And you go to the door, and two burly guys in ill-fitting trench coats are standing there. And they look at you and say, Ivan Ivanovich? And you say, 3 floors up.
Okay, I'll go back for a couple. This one is called The Roadside Farm. A middle-aged couple, married, of course, driving down this lonely country road. She should stop and listen to some of this. But they're driving down this lonely country road, and they get in one violent argument with each other. It is a Lulu, and neither one wants to break the silence, and they drive on and on and on. And then they come to a little fence and a roadside farm. And at the farm, there are monkeys, there are goats, there are pigs, there are cows. The husband can't resist. Turns to his wife and he says, relatives of yours, dear? She said, yes, dear, they're my in-laws. And then somebody told me that men were smarter than women. Okay, let's go with another one. Can I have another one or two? Thank you. Okay. This is called the New York Cocktail Party. It's one of my favorites. It's short, but it's cute, I think. There's a swinging cocktail party going on Park Avenue in New York City. And there are 2 women at the party, both stag. One lady's from New York City, and the other lady's from Texas. So the lady from Texas eases over, and she says to the lady from New York, hi, where y'all from? The lady from New York indignantly says, where I come from, we do not end a preposition, a sentence with a preposition, like your word from. And the Texas lady says, you're right, you're from, you're right. Well, hi, where y'all from, bitch? Huh? Shall I go with 2 more? I've only got 68 more. Okay. No, I'll get this next one, and then I'll turn it over.
How about a very short break here, a very short break.
Okay.
Did you know that the late Zsa Zsa Gabor was a great housekeeper? Every time she got divorced, she kept the house.
If I'd have been married to her, she'd have had a mansion. Okay. Young man sees a sign in a window for a job. He goes in, makes application. They put him to work in the mailroom. He's a young fellow. He spends 3 or 4 months in the mailroom, and a promotion comes through. He's now going to be on the sales force. He spends 6 months on the sales force, and a promotion comes through, and he's now the manager of the sales force. Well, he does that for 6 months, and a promotion comes through, and he's made assistant to the president. Well, he does that for a year, and then the president decides to retire. So he calls the kid in and he says, well, what do you think? What do you have to say about all we've done for you? And the boy says, thanks. And he said, thanks, that's it? That's all you have to say after all we've done for you? He said, well, thanks, Dad. The pearly gates, the pearly gates. You know, St. Peter, he takes charge of the pearly gates of heaven. And one day, 200 thieves arrive at the gates. He gets all excited. He runs back and he says, Lord, there's 200 thieves outside the pearly gates. What do I do? The Lord says, well, I'm just finishing up. He said, another 5, 6, 7 minutes. Go back and entertain them, and I'll come back and I'll take care of it. So he goes back, but as soon as he gets back, he turns around and he runs back screaming, they're gone, they're gone, they're gone. And the Lord says, the 200 thieves. He says, no, our pearly gates. Up to you, Earl.
Okay, a fighter pilot went into a bar and sees this lovely young lady at the bar. And as you might imagine, he sits down next to her and engages her in conversation. In the course of the conversation, she can't help noticing he's got a very fancy watch on with many dials and windows and beeps and a E6B circular computer around the outside. And she said, what does that watch do for you? He said, it tells me everything I want to know all the time. And she said, well, what's it telling you now? And he said, it's telling me that you have no panties on. And she said, oh, but I do. He looked at his watch again and said, oh, the damn thing's an hour fast.
Do you have another one?
Right now?
If you want to. I have one about a watch. Okay, I'm ready to hit the Italians. This one is called the Italian watch. Poor old grandpa is dying. His grandson is there at his bedside. And he says in his broken English, you know, grandson, I'm dying today. And before I die, I'm going to give you my chrome-plated .38 revolver. And the boy says, Grandpa, I don't like guns. I'd much rather have your Rolex watch. He says, hey, kid, you listen to me, boy. When I die, you're going to be a richer man. You're going to run a business. You're going to have a big home, beautiful wife, 2 or 3 bambino. He says, now one night you come home and you find your wife in a bed with some other man. What do you do now? Look at your watch and say, hey, time's up. Staying with old Italians, there's an 80-year-old Italian man, goes to the doctor for an ordinary checkup, and he comes out with a clean bill of health. The doctor says, you know, he said, you're remarkably healthy for a man 80 years old. How do you do what you do? And he says, well, he said, my dad and I, we go to the beach every morning. We stop, we drink wine. We watch the girls in their bathing suits. Doctor says, just a minute, you're 80 years old. And your dad goes with you every morning to the beach? He says, yeah. He said, Dad loves to go to the beach in the morning. He said, great-grandpa would have come this morning, but he's getting married today. And he said, you mean your grandfather is getting, how old is your grandfather? He's 118. The doctor says, fantastic. The man wants to get married at that age? He said, whoever said he wants to? Takes a little thought. Okay, here comes. Feed the alligator. Guy's got a nice farm. He's got a peach orchard on the farm, a big pond on the farm. One day he takes a big bucket to go out to pick some peaches and apples or whatever. And he hears at the pond a lot of giggling and laughing. There are women there, and they're giggling, and they're having a good time. So he goes over with his bucket. And as soon as they see him, they dive into they're naked, right? Well, I'm trying to be nice. As soon as he sees them, as soon as they see him, don't interrupt me anymore. So, they dive into the deep part and they say, we're not going to come out and let you look at us without clothes on. He says, ladies, I have no intention or desire to see your undressed bodies. I simply came with this bucket to feed the alligators. One more. The Polish sausage. Guy walks into the store, walks up to a clerk and says, excuse me, can you tell me where I can get some Polish sausage? And the clerk says, are you Polish? Well, he said, yes, I am. But he said, what has that got to do with anything? He said, listen, kid, if a guy comes in and wanted Italian sausage, would you say, are you Italian? He said, no. He said, supposing a German came in and wanted bratwurst, would you say, are you a German? He said, no. He said, a Mexican comes in. He wants Mexican food. Would you ask him if he's Mexican? The kid says, no. He says, then why did you ask me if I'm Polish? He said, because this is the Office Depot. One more. This one I stole from you. Yeah, I remember you got a terrific laugh one time.
Well, you better tell it right then.
I'll tell. Oh, and we're friends. Okay. A plane takes off from LaGuardia Field, climbs to its proper altitude. The pilot switches on the PA system and he says, what a glorious morning this is. The sun is rising. We have a nice tailwind. I fully expect to be at our destination way ahead. Oh, no, no, no. And there's silence on the plane. A couple of minutes later, he switches it back on. He says, I want to apologize to you folks. He said, I know I have scared a lot of you. But he said, the hostess has spilled hot coffee on the front of my pants. He said, you ought to see the front of my pants. And a guy in first class yelled, big deal. You ought to see the back of mine.
You're right, you stole that one from me. There was a fifth grade teacher who asked her students, do your parents ever tell you stories with a moral which you can relate to the rest of the class? So they started thinking about it, and one of them, there's usual milk and cookies and all that sort of thing, you know, and they finally got to Jamie, and Jamie said, yeah, my dad told me a story about my mom. She was a fighter pilot in Iraq and was hit by anti-aircraft fire and had to bail out. And all she had was a flask of whiskey, a .38 revolver, and a knife. And she's drifting down and decides to drink the flask on the way down in case might get broken when she hit. And she landed, unfortunately, right in the middle of 20 Iraqi soldiers. She immediately killed 15 soldiers with her service revolver, ran out of ammunition, used her knife and killed 4 more before the blade broke, and then strangled the last one with her bare hands. And the teacher said, good heavens, what did your dad say was the moral of that story? He said, stay away from Mom when she's been drinking.
I can tell you're running a little low. You're putting the thing back in. Okay. Well, let's see. I bashed the Poles a little bit. I bashed the Italians a little bit. It's time to bash the Canadians. Pardon me? I'm going to bash the Canadians. Can you hear me? Okay.
Now we hear you.
Now we're okay. 3 fellas are walking along Clearwater Beach, and they come to a bar, and there's a big sign hanging outside that says, all drinks 10 cents. Well, they said, this cannot be true. What kind of drinks can you get for 10 cents? I said, well, let's go in and find out. They went in, the bartender came over, the bar was beautiful. They said, is it a fact that we could have anything we want to drink for 10 cents? He said, yes, sir, all day, all you want. Well, they said, how about 3 martinis? He said, sure. Gives them 3 dry Tanqueray martinis. And they said, can we have 3 more? He said, certainly. Gives them 3 more. So now they've spent a whole total of 60 cents. They said, this is out of this world. They said, how can you afford to stay in business? Well, he said, I am one of the big lottery winners. And he said, all my life I wanted to be a bartender. And he said, this is my way of thanking everybody, 10 cents for a drink. One of the fellows says, well, that's unbelievable. But he said, I see 4 people down at the other end of the bar. They're not drinking. No. He said, they came in early this morning. They're Canadians. They're waiting for happy hour. When I get up tomorrow morning, I'm going to look outside my door. If there's any Canadians, I'm not going to come out. Okay. 2 lines. Oh, I'm sorry. You're on. Jerry, you still there?
Did it? You're awake? Did it? The Department of the Navy is now assigning females to submarines. And addressing boat sailors at Groton, Connecticut, Cobb Sublant laid down some rules. And he said the female sleeping quarters will be out of bounds for all male crew members. Anybody caught breaking this rule will be fined $20 the first time, and $50 for the second time, and the third time be $100. Are there any questions? And a Master Chief stood up and said, sir, how much for a season's pass?
You're terrific, Earl.
Got to know the rules.
Okay. There are 2 lines of people up in heaven. All these people on earth are dead. And the Lord comes out and he says, I'm very disappointed in these men. He said, St. Peter, take the women that are here away. I want to talk just to the men. So he does. And he says, I want every man who wore the pants in his family to form a line on the left. And every man who could not wear the pants in his family form a line on the right. So he waits, and the line on the right stretches beyond sight. There's one guy standing in the line on the left. And the Lord says, you know, he said, I created men to be stronger than women, hoping that they would take over their lives with women. And he said, I don't find that that's true. He said, let me ask the gentleman on the left, how is it that you are the lone man standing in this line? He says, well, he said, this is where my wife told me to stand. Now we're going to go to kindergarten. I love kindergarten jokes. In the first place, they're pretty clean. And that's hard to find in jokes, isn't it?
Yes.
A little kindergarten class, and the teacher is explaining to the children about whales. She said, you know, they are the largest breathing items on the face of the earth, creatures on the face of the earth. But their throat is so small, they cannot swallow a human being. Little girl raises her hand. She says, that's not true, teacher. The teacher becomes indignant. She said, it certainly is true. What makes you say it isn't? Well, she said, the Bible. Jonah was swallowed by a whale. She said, I just told you the whale could not swallow Jonah. She says, well, when I die and go to heaven, I'm going to ask Jonah. And the teacher says, and what makes you think Jonah's in heaven? He may be down in hell. And the girl says, well, if that's where he is, teacher, you ask him. Then there's the Catholic school. I guess tomorrow morning I'll be ducking Catholics. The Catholic school has a first grade class. And the nun is about to let the class out for the day. And she says, when you leave the room, there will be a long wooden table in front of you. On that table will be a large bowl of apples. Every child may have an apple, but only one. Because remember, God is watching you. So the class gets dismissed. Everybody takes an apple. They're walking down towards the end of the table, and there's a big bowl of miniature chocolate bars there. One little boy says, hey, kids, look, chocolate bars. Load up your pants with them. They're free. Take all you want. God's busy watching the apples. Now, bear with me. This one is a little long, but I like it. A farmer has 500 hens and not one rooster. And he's suffering. He doesn't get eggs. He doesn't get little chicks. But somebody tells him that the neighboring farmer, 3 miles down the road, has got a couple of roosters, and maybe he'll sell you one. So he goes down and he asks, and the guy says, sure. He said, I've got the perfect rooster for you. His name is Kenny. And he said, well, what's so special about Kenny? He said, Kenny will do everything that you want a rooster to do. But he's $3,000. Farmer says, oh, come on. He says, I can't pay $3,000 for a rooster. He said, you should for this one. He'll make you a lot of money. So he buys Kenny, carries him home, puts him down on the ground, and like a shot, Kenny is after every hen in the yard. And he's successful. He meets them all. And the farmer's delighted. He's got eggs. He's going to have a business. But Kenny doesn't stop. So he goes to Kenny and he says, Kenny, please, I paid $3,000 for you. You're killing yourself. Stop. I don't want you doing this all the time. The next day he's looking for Kenny, can't find him. He looks all around, and way off at the pond, there is Kenny. He's having fun with the ducks. So the farmer goes down and he says, Kenny, I gave you a lecture yesterday. Please stop what you're doing. I paid a lot of money for you. Now quit it. So he leaves. Next morning he's looking for Kenny, can't find him. But there's Kenny, way out in the meadow, lying on his back. His tongue is out. His eyes are closed. He looks like he's absolutely dead. And above there are flying around and around those crows that eat buzzards. That's right. You know, I'm awfully glad I have you. I really am. They're flying around and Kenny is laying there dead. And the farmer says to him, Kenny, I warned you. I pleaded with you. Now you've cost me $3,000. And Kenny opened one eye and he said, shh, they're getting closer. I better clean this up a little, huh? Oh, break. I told you we didn't rehearse.
You have to give the star a short break. In the course of a conversation, two gentlemen, they learned that one of them had 3 wives who had all died. And so in being kind and considerate, one of them asked, well, what did the first one die of? And he said, well, she died of mushroom poisoning. Oh, that's too bad. What did the second one die of? Mushroom poisoning. What? Well, that's a strange coincidence, isn't it? Well, what did the third one die of? A cracked skull. A cracked skull. Well, how'd that happen? She wouldn't eat her mushrooms.
You don't have another?
One.
Do you want another one or you want to wait? I've only got 25 or 30 more.
I'll give you one more, then you can
All
go
right.
Uninterrupted for as long as you want.
Let's go with the 80. This is a short one,
Oh.
in case you're all getting tired. This is about a court case. An elderly man and woman are standing in front of the judge. She has been caught stealing a can of peaches. And the judge says to her, Madam, how many peaches are in the can? She said, 6, Your Honor. Okay, he said, I sentence you to 6 days in the county jail. Just then her husband says, Your Honor, can I say something? He said, certainly. He said, she also stole a can of peas. Now we come to the girl on the bridge. A man is riding his bicycle and he gets halfway across the bridge when he sees on the other side a beautiful young lady apparently ready to jump into the water. He rushes over and he says, Stop, stop. Why would a beautiful young girl like you want to commit suicide? She said, it's a long, long story. Well, he said, listen, you're a lovely girl. Come over and give me a kiss. She goes over and she kisses him. And it lasts and lasts and lasts. When she's through, he says, "Wow, that is the best kiss I ever had in my whole life." He said, "What a talent you have. Why would you want to commit suicide?" She said, "It's my parents. They don't like it when I dress up like a girl."
Sure, that wouldn't offend anybody.
No, I'm going to be very disliked tomorrow, but
Want another one like that?
pardon me?
Want another one like that one?
Yeah,
The
go
guy's
ahead.
in a bar,
Go ahead.
and he looks down the end of the bar, and there's two good-looking young ladies down the end of the bar. And so he says, the bartender, get those two girls a drink for me. He said, you don't want to give them a drink. They're lesbians. So he said, that's all right. Go ahead. I want to give them a drink. So after a while, he wanders down there, and he says, what part of Lebanon are you from?
Keep it up, Earl. You got me laughing. Okay. Not quite through. There's a lady racing down the street she lives on in her car going full speed. And she turns into the driveway, screeches her wheels, opens the door to her house, and she screams, "I won the lottery! I won the lottery!" Her husband says, "We won the lottery? Where are we going? Shall I pack for the beach? Shall I pack for the mountains? What shall I do?" She said, "Just pack and get the hell out."
That wasn't very nice.
Look, I told you, if we had $1 for as much as they're laughing, we wouldn't have to do this anymore. Okay,
We could retire.
you could retire. I'm back to the first grade. The teacher says on the first day of school, there's a way for us to get acquainted quickly. I want the first person to stand, give her name and what her father does, and spell what her father does. First little girl gets up and she says, "My name is Mary Jane, and my father is a doctor, D-O-C-T-O-R. She said, "Mary Jane, that's fine." Next, little girl gets up and she says, "My name is Leanna." And she said, "My father is a dentist, D-E-N-T-I-S-T. She said, "Leanna, that is fine. Very good." Next, little fat boy gets up and he says, "My name is Billy Butler, and my father is a shirt maker, S-H-I-T-M-A-K-E-R. She says, "No, Billy, no, you're not spelling that correctly. Try it again. My name is Billy Butler, and my father is a shirt maker, S-H-I-T-M-A-K-E-R. She says, "Billy, you're not doing it right. Go to the blackboard and write it down." Next, little kid gets up and he says, "My name is Joey Belletti, and my old man's a bookie, and I'm laying 8-5. That kid writes shit maker on the wall." Is it time for Jerry to play a whole song?
A whole song.
A whole song.
I'll give you another one now, okay? You ready? The guy is out ice fishing. You know how in ice fishing you cut a hole in the water and ice and you fish? He's out there hours, didn't catch a damn thing. So he moves farther down and hears his booming voice. "There are no fish in there." He goes down a little farther, he cuts another hole in the ice, and he's there a few minutes, and the booming voice says, "There are no fish in there." He goes to another spot, and finally he hears the voice again. "There are no fish in there." "God, is that you?" "No, it's the rink manager."
Okay, I'm coming. Believe it or not, we're getting almost finished.
5 minutes.
Well, it's going to be 6 or 7 because I got a couple good ones here. Okay, the Lord creates Adam and Eve. And he says to Adam, Adam, I want you to walk down this hill, cross over the creek, up the next hill, and into the cave. And he says, Lord, what's a hill? Well, he said, a hill is where the land goes down or the land goes up. Well, he said, what's a creek? He said, a creek is the water that flows along the bottom. Oh. Well, he said, what's a cave? He said, the cave is a hole above the ground. And when you get in the cave, I want you to be very nice. There's a girl in there by the name of Eve. And he said, this will be the beginning of the population of the world. Well, he's in there for all night. The next day he comes back and he says, Lord. And the Lord says, how'd you make out with Eve? He says, Lord, I have a question. What's a headache? How's breakfast in the White House? Are you ready for it? George Bush and Cheney go down to have breakfast in the White House. And the girl comes in and she says, Mr. Cheney, what's your pleasure? He said, I'd like a nice bowl of oatmeal. Okay, she said. She said, Mr. President, he's reading the menu. What is your pleasure? He said, I want a quickie. She said, Mr. President, why, you're as bad as Bill Clinton. And she storms out. And George has got a funny look on his face. He looks at Cheney. And Cheney says, George, it's pronounced Keach. I didn't do any Jewish jokes, did I? I don't care. I'm going to get shot anyhow. A woman walks into a pharmacy, Jewish-owned pharmacy. Little Jewish man behind the counter. She said, I want to buy some cyanide. He said, cyanide you're wanting? Why do you want it? I can't sell you cyanide. It's against the law. No, I don't want to sell you cyanide. I don't even want to talk to you. I don't even want you in my store. Do you realize to the electric chair you'll be going? I'm following you there if I sell you to you. No, please leave. With that, she opens her purse. She pulls out a photograph of her husband and the pharmacist's wife in bed. He stares at the photograph and he says, well, you never told me you had a prescription. Dentist office. I'm going to be through in a few minutes. What do I do after 8 o'clock? Do we drink now? Okay. This, I happen to like this one. It's called the dentist's office. A man is racing down with his wife in the car at high speed. He pulls up in front of the dentist's office. He goes in screaming, Doc, yank it out. Yank it out, Doc. I'm late for my tee-off time at the club. Please, just take your pliers and yank it out. He says, well, you know, he said, that's going to hurt. He said, I don't think it's going to hurt, and I don't want Novocaine. I don't want gas. I'm in a hurry. Just reach in and yank it out. Well, he says, okay, which tooth is it? Man turned to his wife and says, honey, open your mouth and show the man. You want me to tell a nice one? You know ice is bad for you. Do you know that? You know that ice is bad for you? If you drink scotch with ice, it's no good for you. It can affect your kidneys. If you have bourbon over ice, it can affect your liver. If you have gin, it can affect your heart. That proves ice is no good for you. Look, I got one that they didn't laugh. I told you I get paid if you laugh. Well, there's two more. And I don't know. I've told this one so many times. Poor Bill Clark isn't here tonight. He's heard it 8 times or 9. But let me give it to you anyhow. This is an Irish man, and it's an Irish joke. Mrs. O'Donnell was walking down the street in Dublin, and coming towards her is Father O'Malley. And he says, top of the morning to you, Mrs. O'Donnell. He said, if I recall correctly, it must be 2 years since I married thee. She said, 3, Father. Oh, 3, you're right. Do you have any wee ones? No, Father. She said, we have no children. Oh, a pity, that's a pity. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got to go to a conference in Rome next week, and I'm going to light the children's candle for you. Oh, Father, that would be wonderful. So they say goodbye, and they part. Well, 10 years pass. And down the streets coming Father O'Malley and Mrs. O'Donnell. And he says, Mrs. O'Donnell, it's been ages since I've seen you. She said, yes, it has, Father. He said, tell me, do you have any wee ones yet? She said, we have 3 sets of twins. That's 6. And 4 singles. Oh, he said, praise the Lord. That's wonderful, wonderful. Tell me, how's your husband? She said, well, he's in Rome now. Oh, on business? She said, no, he went there to blow out that damn candle. The last one. A little town west of Pittsburgh. There is a plastics factory. And the man who runs it is a wonderful guy. He's loved by everybody in that little town. As a matter of fact, he employs most of the town. But he's well respected. He's married. He's got 2 children. And he's just a top-notch guy, except Thursday night he's supposed to bowl, but he doesn't go bowling. He meets a little Italian girl, and they have a rendezvous. One night she comes in and she explains that she is pregnant. He goes into a rage. He says, I can't take this. Do you realize I'm ruined? I'll lose my business. My wife will leave. My kids will hate me. He said, I'm a ruined man. Unless, if you would go to Italy and have the child, I'll give you a check tonight for $50,000. And if you stay in Italy and raise the child until it's 18 years old, you get $20,000 a month. She said, Mister, I'm on the next plane. But how will I let you know when the child is born, or even what it is? Well, he said, that's not hard. He said, you write me a postcard, and you simply say, we have spaghetti. He said, nobody will know. any different? He said, everybody in Italy has spaghetti. So the postcard comes to the house, and his wife says, we got a very strange card today from Italy. He said, oh, what does it say? It says, we have spaghetti, and spaghetti, and spaghetti. 2 with meatballs, 1 without. I want to thank everybody for coming. Would you like to stay another hour? I've got 40 more. Okay, what else? Anything else?
That's all. Wish them all well. Thank them for coming.
Didn't you do that?
Oh, did I?
Wait a minute, it's my job. I'll do it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for coming.